So Zootopia 2 is the long-awaited sequel to the first Zootopia film, and I think what Disney did right with the sequel is that it realizes what the biggest star is of the original Zootopia film, which is that it's the environment. That's one of the things I love so much about them. I love this giant metropolis, this kind of ecosystem of how all these different animals are able to interact and live together, and how they kind of deal with the security issues about whether or not they will eat each other. But what I think the sequel does even better is that, because a big problem I noticed for a lot of people with the first film was that when you start using the framework of Zootopia with all these anthropomorphic animals who are trying to live together, and there's this stereotype among them about how, like, predators cannot live with prey, you immediately run into some problems when you try to stage an allegory about race relations through speciesism. Namely because you do see a big difference between like, animals on the Discovery Channel and, real racism in the streets. You do run into some problems with that. I do admire Zootopia for trying to make that leap there, but I think that allegory kind of stumbles a bit here and there. Where I think the sequel actually improves is it stresses a story that's more about immigration and cultural appropriation. And even like some historical revisionism as well. And I think that really works very well for this film. I think it gets it right back on track for using these anthropomorphic animals to say something more deeply profound about our world, instead of getting hung up on, like, predators and preys and speciesism and all that. So that actually works much better for this film. And serves as a good framework for getting back to the cop duo of Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde here. Like, Nick the Fox used to be a thief, voiced again by Jason Bateman, and Judy Hopps, played by Jennifer Goodwin, once again, is the do-gooding cop who always, tries to look on, like, the brighter side and not try to like, fight against the discrimination that she faces as a smaller rabbit among all these giant cops in her department. So there is a lingering aspect of, like, where you go next from there, which I did appreciate how they set up in the film, because sure, we do get like another fun, exciting car chase, and another caper for Judy and Nick to solve, just to show that, yeah, they're still a good buddy cop duo, but they're also, loose cannons, typical cop movie type stuff. But what I did love is how the police chief, even though I expected the police chief to just, like, scream at them and say, I'm gonna take your badges, I'm gonna pull you off the street. And he kind of does that, but he also stresses that, look, you guys gotta win, but you kind of have to still maintain it. Like, you did prove that, yeah, rabbits can be really good cops, but now there's all eyes on you to make sure that you set a good example. There's a little bit on that with Nick as well, and I think, ultimately what it comes down to is that the two of them need to be more emotionally honest in their line of work. And it comes through pretty well, even though, despite the fact that it kind of ends up as like a big emotional dump, just to kind of get all that just to kind of get all that out there, because most of the film they're engaged in this plot to try to help out this reptile of Gary the Snake, voiced by Ke Huy Quan, who is trying to uncover a conspiracy about why Zootopia won't allow reptiles in their walls. Like, Zootopia really has a big deal where they don't want to allow reptiles in their walls. Like, they're feared. And of course, there's this whole history behind demonizing why snakes can't live in this environment with all these other animals. But it has less to do with species and more to do with how the legacy of these snakes has been tarnished by this family of lynxes, led by Milton Lynxley, voiced by David Strathairn. And I love how they set up this dynamic, because you kind of focus a little bit more on Zootopia itself, because the whole plot concerns not just the immigration and how, like, the different species have their own worlds, but how the weather is affected by that, because the whole plot involves who has ownership of the weather machines within Zootopia that has allowed it to proliferate this long. So, and it's very much, it's like rewritten history that they're trying to prove here. So there's this giant conspiracy, and it's really exciting on that level alone. But on a visual level, it's for one, it's exciting because this film does what I love when Disney films do best. When a lot of the Pixar films I love is that they take you into different worlds. They take you into places you've never been before, places where you can have more clever stuff to do, so that it's not just the same thing. And I think this is a big problem that a lot of Disney animated films have had, where they're not quite sure where to go next with their material. It always just feels like they're going around the same backyard that they've been in before, and they're just kind of trying to find like a new mission or a new mystery to solve. And thankfully, that is not the case with Zootopia 2. There is a new mystery to solve, but it takes us to some new and exciting locations. In particular, I really loved when they went to the marsh section of Zootopia, because you have all these different, you have underwater cafes, you have this sunken ship, which has this little secluded tavern. You have all these different reptile creatures that are exciting there. You have one voiced by Danny Trejo, who plays this kind of a plumbed basilisk, and I just love how deep his voice has gotten. He's perfectly suited for this role. Like a lot of voice actors in this film. In particular, I mean, like Idris Elba, of course, is like a natural fit here. But then you also have like a conspiracy beaver trying to investigate everything here. You have so many different voices in this film that it's honestly hard to keep track of them, and it feels almost kind of like they shoved too many voices in there, because there's a blink and you miss it moment where they do showcase Dwayne Johnson voicing a character, and you wouldn't know it until you look it up later. It's like, oh wait, that person was supposed to be doing, like, obviously, like, you hear Alan Tudyk. You hear his voice in the film, you could recognize him instantly, but then you have like a few ones you don't expect here. Like in particular, the beaver I was mentioning, it was called Nibbles Maple Stick, which I love the fun pun. I love how they're willing to embrace the fun pun names here with like Gary the Snake and Nibbles Maple Stick. It's like it's ridiculous, but you know what? It's a I'm fine with it. Like, there's enough cleverness here that they can have their fun little pun names here. And she does a really good job. I love her little accent there. I love the little details about how she has a desk filled with pencils that she's obviously been chewing on. So they set up some pretty good gags with her. And there are too many new and interesting characters that they introduce in here to count. And that brings up another aspect that I really liked about the sequel, is that it does not exhaust the familiar. I think this is a big problem with Disney films, is that they find something that's really funny, and then they lean on that. They provide more of that character again, and don't really give you a good alternative, like, another funny character that you can admire, which you do here. You have Nibbles, you have Danny Trejo's character, you have so many other new characters introduced that are a lot of fun. There's some pretty good twists with them as well. The other thing to mention about the film is that there are a lot of returning characters. Like, if you were hoping to see more of Flash, the sloth who's really slow at the DMV and very fast when he drives, yes, you do get more of him, but I think you get just enough of them. I think there are a lot of returning characters in this film, but you only get just enough of them so you're not sick of them. They show up again, so you're like, oh yeah, I remember them. Like, I remember the small little possum godfather who was voiced by Maurice LaMarche. Yeah, he was pretty funny. He's back, but he's not in the film for too long. He's in there just enough to get a few good gags in, and that is pretty much the whole deal with every one of the characters here. They all show up for an essential role, for a very clever gag, and then they just kind of exit and let the mystery keep going, so we can get to the next interesting set piece and the next piece of the puzzle here, and the next part of uncovering this giant plot about how the rich kind of control the weather control systems of Zootopia. I thought that was really fun. So there's a lot I love about this film. I love the allegory is more on point here. The characters are more fun. Like, Ke Huy Quan is just, he's so cute in the role. And, Jennifer Goodwin and Jason Bateman, they still have really good rapport. I love their dynamic. I love how their dynamic also shifts into a debate about whether or not it's worth risking your life to uncover this dangerous conspiracy, when it could mean that, you could end up dead. And Judy is essentially trying to argue, yes, it is worth it, while Nick is very, standoffish, he seems very casual, but when he has to, like, stick his own neck out, he's not willing to do it. So there is a very personal emotional drive for these two that I think makes the mystery all the more exciting as it goes along, in addition to exploring all the fun little aspects of this world. Like I think there's like a Burning Man concert and they called it Burning Mammal or something like that. All these fun little bits here, and even like the smaller like pop culture references here. Like there is a pop culture reference to a Pixar movie and one very overt reference to The Shining towards the end of the film. I feel like the film kind of earns those references because so much else in the film is clever without having to rely on a lot of past Disney films or pop culture in general, it feels more like sprinkles rather than, the main course here. Because I really did feel for Gary and the reptiles who want to assert their place in Zootopia. I think the allegory is very much on point here, so that so that parents can very much appreciate the great storytelling here, but also give the family something, mentally to munch on when they leave the theater. So it's not just like mindless entertainment here. It actually is, a story that is talking about something that's very relevant and important and told perfectly through an allegory where you could apply it to several aspects in life instead of getting hung up on, a sloth really shouldn't be at the DMV. That doesn't make sense for a species. I've actually seen a review complain about this. So thankfully, that aspect is gone, and I think that actually makes me love Zootopia 2 more than the first Zootopia film, because there's more to do, there's more to explore, there's more colorful characters, there's better gags, there's greater emotional depth, and just a lot of thought put into everything. Like, there's as much thought put into this conspiracy and how the animals of Zootopia interact with each other as there is in the elaborate tube system about how water-based animals can get around on land. They've thought of just about everything in this film to make it just work. The film is just overflowing with cleverness, and credit to director Jared Bush and Brian Howard with Bush writing the script again. They have put a lot of effort into making sure that there's a lot of detail in this film, in both the environment, in the characters, and the story in general. So yeah, I was thoroughly impressed with how much I loved Zootopia 2, and I already really liked the first Zootopia film. But I think with this sequel, they've actually kind of focused in on what are the strengths of this anthropomorphic environment and how to explore it in a more interesting and clever way. Because I know I'm making it sound like the film is very heavy with its talk of of immigration and cultural appropriation, but ultimately the film is it's still fun. Like there's still great gags. It's still wondrous to look at its environment. It's still a very fun film. It's just it actually has some brains to it as well. It's not just like, mindless escapism. There is something more to it. And I think that's what's been missing from a lot of these Disney films that get shoved out at Thanksgiving, is that they always just feel like they're trying to recapture something that isn't quite there. And Zootopia 2 actually feels like it's building on something from the first film instead of just finding busy work for all these familiar and colorful characters. I love the hell out of Zootopia 2 way more than the first Zootopia.